Imagine a tragedy so devastating. It dwarfs the infamous sinking of the Titanic in terms of loss of life. Few people know about it, but this maritime disaster remains the deadliest in history, with estimates suggesting over 9,000 people lost their lives in a matter of hours. But what makes this story so shrouded in mystery? What circumstances led to the sinking of the MV Wilhelm Gustloff, a German passenger liner that was converted into a hospital ship during World War II? Let's uncover the truth behind this forgotten tragedy. The MV Wilhelm Gustloff was a behemoth of a ship, built to accommodate over 1,000 passengers. At the time of its construction, it was one of the largest ships in the world. In 1939, the German government requisitioned it to serve as a troop transport. As World War II escalated, the ship's role expanded, and it was converted into a hospital ship, designed to evacuate wounded soldiers from the front lines. In January 1945, as the Soviet army closed in on East Prussia, the Wilhelm Gustloff received a distress call to evacuate civilians and wounded soldiers from the besieged region. The ship was packed with over 10,000 people, including women, children, and the wounded. The situation was dire. The Soviet army was closing in, and the Wilhelm Gustloff was one of the few vessels available to ferry people to safety. On January 30th, 1945, the Wilhelm Gustloff set sail from the port of Gotenhofen, East Prussia. As it navigated through icy waters, it was spotted by a Soviet submarine, the L-3. At 9:15 p.m., the submarine launched a torpedo attack on the ship. The torpedo hit the Wilhelm Gustloff on the starboard side, causing catastrophic damage. Water poured in rapidly, and the ship began to list severely. Panic erupted on board as passengers and crew scrambled to find lifeboats. But with over 10,000 people on board, there were not enough lifeboats to go around. Women and children were given priority, but many men were left behind, forced to wait in vain for rescue. The ship's crew, who had done their best to prepare for the worst, were overwhelmed by the sheer scale of the disaster. As the night wore on, the Wilhelm Gustloff continued to list and take on water. At 10:45 p.m., it finally slipped beneath the surface, taking over 9,000 people with it. The survivors, who had managed to board lifeboats, were left to face the harsh conditions of the Baltic Sea. Many died from exposure, hypothermia, and drowning. The sinking of the Wilhelm Gustloff was a tragedy that shook the world, but it has largely been forgotten over time. Why is that? One reason is that the disaster was overshadowed by the scale of the war itself. Another reason is that the German government, desperate to downplay the loss, initially refused to release official casualty figures. But the truth about the Wilhelm Gustloff's sinking is far more complex than a simple maritime disaster. It's a story of human tragedy, a testament to the horrors of war, and a reminder of the importance of compassion and empathy. As we delve deeper into the circumstances surrounding the sinking, we'll discover that this tragedy is not just about numbers, it's about the lives lost, the families torn apart, and the survivors who were left to pick up the pieces. In the next section, we'll examine the circumstances that led to the sinking of the Wilhelm Gustloff. We'll talk to historians and survivors who will share their insights into the disaster, and we'll explore the reasons why this tragedy has been largely forgotten by the world. Join us as we uncover the truth behind this maritime disaster and shed light on a forgotten chapter of history. Pause for a moment. Imagine being on board the Wilhelm Gustloff. That fateful night, the chaos, the panic, the desperation. It's a scene that's hard to imagine, but one that's etched in the memories of those who survived. As we continue to explore this story, we'll be asking ourselves the same questions that many people have been asking for decades. How could this have happened? Why was this tragedy so largely overlooked by history? And what can we learn from this disaster to prevent similar tragedies from occurring in the future? Pause again. In the next section, we'll be taking a closer look at the aftermath of the sinking. We'll examine the investigation into the disaster and the reasons why the German government initially downplayed the loss of life. We'll also be talking to survivors who will share their personal stories of survival and loss. Join us as we shed light on this forgotten tragedy and explore the lessons that can be learned from it. Imagine a maritime disaster so catastrophic it eclipses the Titanic in sheer scale of human tragedy. The MV Wilhelm Gustloff, a ship once destined for luxury cruises, was transformed into a hospital vessel in the midst of war. But this hastily converted ship would soon become the deadliest maritime disaster in history, claiming over 9,000 lives in a matter of hours. The question that echoes through the corridors of history: what drove officials to overload this ship with so many lives, despite the risks? The MV Wilhelm Gustloff was born from the grandeur of the German shipping industry. Designed to be a luxury liner, the ship boasted an impressive array of amenities for the rich and elite. However, as the war raged on, the ship's owners decided to repurpose it into a hospital vessel. The conversion was rushed, with minimal attention paid to the ship's structural integrity. This hasty decision would prove to be a recipe for disaster. Captain Alfred Hardenstein, a seasoned but inexperienced commander, was handed the reins of the Wilhelm Gustloff. With the war intensifying, pressure mounted on him to evacuate as many people as possible from the besieged city of East Prussia. The stakes were high, and the clock was ticking. But was Captain Hardenstein truly equipped to handle the enormity of the task ahead? The ship's cargo capacity was woefully inadequate to accommodate the sheer number of people on board. Designed to carry a mere 1,500 passengers, the Wilhelm Gustloff was now crammed with over 10,000 desperate souls. This gross over-reliance on the ship's capacity would prove to be a catastrophic gamble. The ship's crew, overwhelmed by the sheer numbers, struggled to maintain order and provide basic care to the passengers. As the Wilhelm Gustloff set sail, it became a floating hospital, a desperate attempt to rescue those trapped in the war-torn region. But the ship's fate was all but sealed. On January 30th, 1945, the Wilhelm Gustloff was torpedoed by a Soviet submarine, leaving it to sink in the icy waters of the Baltic Sea. The resulting chaos was apocalyptic, with panicked passengers fighting for space on the ship's already overcrowded decks. The tragedy that unfolded that fateful night was a testament to the chaos and desperation of war. As the ship went down, over 9,000 lives were lost, including women, children, and the wounded. The sheer scale of the disaster was staggering, and yet it remains a relatively unknown chapter in history. The Wilhelm Gustloff disaster raises more questions than answers. What drove officials to overload the ship with so many lives despite the risks? Was it a desperate attempt to save as many people as possible, or a reckless disregard for human life? The truth, much like the ship itself, remains lost in the depths of history. As we delve deeper into the story of the Wilhelm Gustloff, we're left with a haunting question. What would you do if faced with the impossible choice of saving as many lives as possible, even if it meant putting the lives of those on board at greater risk? The Wilhelm Gustloff disaster serves as a sobering reminder of the human cost of war and the devastating consequences of rash decision-making. The story of the Wilhelm Gustloff is a tragic testament to the complexities of human nature. It's a tale of heroism, desperation, and the unyielding pursuit of survival. As we continue our investigation into this maritime disaster, we'll explore the human side of the tragedy, the heroism that emerged in the face of unimaginable horror, and the lessons that can be learned from this forgotten chapter in history. Imagine a tragedy so devastating it dwarfs the infamous sinking of the Titanic in terms of loss of life, yet remains shrouded in mystery and largely unknown to the world. Few people realize that on a single fateful night in January 1945, a maritime disaster unfolded that would claim over 9,000 lives, leaving behind a trail of questions and unanswered queries. But what was the true nature of this catastrophe? And who was behind the events that led to such an unprecedented loss of human life? To unravel the enigma surrounding this tragedy, we need to delve into the world of covert operations and the high-stakes game of cat and mouse, played out during World War II. The Soviet submarine that torpedoed the MV Wilhelm Gustloff was part of a clandestine mission to disrupt German supply lines. But what drove the Soviet Union to prioritize the destruction of German ships over the lives of innocent civilians? Was it a calculated move to weaken the enemy's grip on Europe, or a reckless gamble that would have far-reaching consequences? At the helm of the Soviet submarine was Lieutenant Anatoly Sabatin, a seasoned commander operating under strict orders from his superiors. Sabatin's mission was clear: to identify and target any German ship deemed a threat to Soviet operations. And so, on the night of January 30th, 1945, his submarine closed in on the Wilhelm Gustloff, a converted hospital ship carrying thousands of civilians, many of them women and children. The attack was swift and deadly, with multiple torpedoes striking the ship with devastating force. The ensuing chaos was unimaginable, with panic-stricken passengers rushing to the lifeboats as the ship began to list and take on water. But here's the astonishing part. The attack on the Wilhelm Gustloff was likely a deliberate attempt to sink the ship, rather than a mere accident. Intelligence suggests that the Soviet submarine was acting on specific orders to target German vessels, with the Wilhelm Gustloff being a prime target due to its critical role in ferrying troops and supplies. This raises disturbing questions about the morality of war and the lengths to which nations will go to achieve their objectives. Did the Soviet Union genuinely believe that sinking the Wilhelm Gustloff would cripple German operations, or was this a reckless and inhumane tactic to break the enemy's will? As we continue to unravel the mystery surrounding this tragedy, it becomes clear that the sinking of the Wilhelm Gustloff was merely one piece in a much larger puzzle. The war was a complex web of alliances, rivalries, and covert operations, with each side willing to push the limits of human decency in pursuit of victory. And yet, despite the chaos and destruction that ensued, the Wilhelm Gustloff story remains a largely untold tale, a reminder of the devastating consequences of war and the need for nations to prioritize human life above all else. The story of the Wilhelm Gustloff serves as a poignant reminder of the human cost of conflict and the importance of learning from history's lessons. As we reflect on the events that led to this tragedy, we are forced to confront the darkest aspects of human nature and the devastating consequences of war. But what can we learn from this story? And how can we apply these lessons to our own lives and the world around us? Join us next time as we continue to explore the untold story of the Wilhelm Gustloff and its relevance to our modern world. Imagine a maritime tragedy so shrouded in secrecy that it's been hidden in plain sight for decades. The sinking of the MV Wilhelm Gustloff, a ship that's been dubbed the deadliest maritime disaster in history, is a story of loss, deception, and controversy. But there's another, even more catastrophic disaster waiting to be uncovered. A tragedy that's been intentionally obscured from the public eye. Welcome to the sinking of the MV Steuben, a ship so deadly that its true story has been hidden for over 70 years. As we delve deeper into the mysteries surrounding this tragedy, it becomes clear that the German government and officials were desperate to keep the truth from the public. They feared that the devastating loss of life would undermine morale and expose the country's dire situation. In an effort to downplay the tragedy, they released a carefully crafted statement, claiming that the ship had sunk due to a combination of bad weather and a naval mine. But this explanation didn't add up, and many historians have long suspected that there was more to the story. But the German government wasn't the only one trying to cover up the truth. Soviet officials were also involved in a massive effort to conceal the true extent of the disaster. They feared that revealing the number of German refugees and soldiers on board would expose their involvement in the sinking and compromise their own war efforts. As a result, the Soviet Union issued a statement claiming that the ship had sunk due to a naval mine and that only a handful of people had been killed. But the truth is far more sinister. Historians and researchers have long debated the circumstances surrounding the sinking, with some suggesting a cover-up or even a deliberate act of genocide. The ship, which was carrying over 9,000 people including women, children, and the wounded, was torpedoed by a Soviet submarine in the early hours of January 31, 1945. The resulting explosion was massive, and the ship sank in just 45 minutes, taking an estimated 9,000 people with it. As we continue to unravel the mystery surrounding this tragedy, we begin to realize the scale of the cover-up. The German government, the Soviet Union, and even some historians have all played a role in hiding the truth. But why? What secrets have been hidden about this tragedy for so long? And what can we learn from it today? The answer lies in the complexities of war, where the lines between right and wrong are constantly blurred. As we explore the story of the MV Steuben, we'll uncover a tale of human tragedy, deception, and the devastating consequences of war. But we'll also discover a story that challenges our understanding of history and forces us to confront the darkest aspects of human nature. Imagine a maritime disaster so catastrophic it defied the odds of survival, yet remains shrouded in mystery. On a single fateful night in January 1945, the MV Wilhelm Gustloff, a German liner, sank beneath the icy waters of the Baltic Sea, claiming over 9,000 lives in what's been dubbed the deadliest maritime disaster in history. But what if I told you there's another, even more devastating tragedy that's been largely forgotten? Let's call it the sinking of the MV Goya, a German transport ship that met its demise in the same treacherous waters just a month after the Wilhelm Gustloff. What's striking about this tragedy is that it occurred in the midst of World War II, a time when the world was already reeling from the horrors of conflict. But the Goya's story is one of calculated risks, bureaucratic blunders, and the devastating consequences of playing with fate. As we examine the sinking of the Goya, we begin to see a pattern emerge, a pattern of tragedy, deceit, and the devastating impact of human error. The Goya's story is a cautionary tale about the dangers of war, the importance of accountability, and the need for more effective emergency preparedness and evacuation procedures. It's a reminder that even in the face of chaos, there's always a responsibility to prioritize human life. One of the most striking aspects of the Goya's story is the controversy surrounding its sinking. Official records suggest that the ship was torpedoed by a Soviet submarine, but the truth is far more complex. As we delve deeper into the archives, we uncover a web of intrigue and deception that raises questions about the reliability of historical records and the importance of transparency in the face of tragedy. The sinking of the MV Goya may be a forgotten tragedy, but its lessons are more relevant today than ever. As we reflect on this devastating event, let us remember the importance of prioritizing human life and accountability in the face of crisis. We must also acknowledge the devastating impact of human error and the need for more effective emergency preparedness and evacuation procedures. So what can we learn from the sinking of the MV Goya? How can we prevent such tragedies from occurring in the future? Share your thoughts on this tragic event and the lessons we can learn from it. Leave a comment below and let's continue the conversation.